How do we use automation to improve efficiency in a society? Automation and systems thinking can help improve the way we operate and will allow for an abundant society. Elio Grieco guides us out of the cave on this episode as we discuss automation, vertical farming, and what metrics we should or even can analyze. Elio is an Arizona native who has been engaged in software development and systems architecture since 1997. He has worked on a variety of systems such as computer-aided design software for electronic design automation of analog circuits, data audits, and system optimization contracts. He also worked on the Seller Central platform engineering team of Amazon.com. Pretty cool. He currently works with multiple state and federal security collaboratives and grants. These efforts promote collaboration between federal, corporate, and educational partners across the state of Arizona and the nation. Such efforts include co-chairing the Community Integration Subcommittee of Cybersecurity Canyon, as well as participating in the general meetings and subcommittees of the Greater Phoenix Chamber Foundation Workforce Collaborative on cybersecurity. He's also working on a really interesting project called the Nebula Project, which is a distributed, compartmented, and cryptographically verifiable global data transmission, storage, and management protocol. It was started to demonstrate how to rebuild the internet on top of these constructed technologies. So yeah, basically Elio's a really smart badass. But with that, let's now take our seventh step out of the cave with Elio Grieco. Alrighty, so just to kind of get us in the frame of the conversation, just kind of give this basic help of framing. And what it is kind of this. So let's imagine for a second that we've purchased an island off the coast of Fiji, and our goal is to create an optimized society fresh from start, meaning that we'll rethink the culture, economic structures, educational systems, government systems, urban development, everything basically.
I like where this is going.
Restarted, right?
I like this a lot.
So I'm your client, and I'm able to pay you whatever it takes. Or client, I don't know if I'm going to stick with client, but
okay.
We're working together,
Sure.
and I can pay you whatever it takes. Money's not an issue to get the job done right, to create the automated systems that will enhance the human experience, where machines aid us and don't end up ruling us. We have a completely connected city, whatever infrastructure needed to support the tech, needed to support the systems we'd like to implement, and the materials needed to make it happen. So, with that, what should we do around the use of automation to help us better keep us from having to do mundane work that no one really wants to do to maximize human potential?
Okay. Well, first of all, I wish there was video on this podcast because I'm wearing a red shirt just by accident, but red for Ed and red shoes.
I like it. Yeah, let's go. I'm all about that, man.
The first thing is education. There's a thing that, I forget who I read this, where I found this first, but there's a saying, it is fundamentally impossible to solve a moral problem with a purely technological solution. So, if we're talking about how we rebuild the society, which is actually near and dear to my heart. I think we both read Manna, and it basically outlines some of the same stuff.
Yeah.
One thing is it's fundamentally impossible to solve a human problem with a purely technological solution. There's a moral domain and there's a technological domain. And these are two separate things. And you can use technology to augment and add to a moral solution, but just the tech alone cannot handle that. So that said, education, like if you want a civilized society, there's no way to take civility out of it. You need to have proper education.
Everything's education. Everything. Yeah. And that's something I'm going to harp so hard on in this podcast is building the right kind of education system. Because with that, that's how you fix all problems. I think a lot of people don't understand is how you educate the young and just people as they get older, obviously. But like it starts when people are young, and that's what becomes a person is how you put information in their head.
And part of that is how do you define education? I mean, right now, a lot of this stuff is basically just drilling and memorizing steps, and it's becoming a huge cert now.
Whoa.
So that's the first thing, is you have to embrace, I don't know if it necessarily has to be constructionist. I'm a big fan. I went to Montessori school when I was a kid. But you have to have people learn how to solve real problems. Education is really about getting people, training them how, when I say how to think, I don't mean what to think. I don't mean a certain ideology.
Yeah.
But I mean strategies for how to think effectively. Here's a problem. How are we going to solve that? What are the pros and cons of these different ways of solving this problem? What else do I need to know in order to fully solve the problem? What other problems might this create by solving it this way? And that's something that we don't really see nearly enough of in school. A lot of it is memorize these steps, repeat them back later, you get some score that means basically nothing, and then maybe that'll get you hired, and you can go do a bad job in business.
That's why I was so disenfranchised with school, man. It just was not a place for me because of that. I was like, that's not how I want to learn. That's not how I want to figure it out. I want to go and like do it and implement it and try it out and learn through practice and failing and then until I kind of figure it out.
Yeah, so we won't turn this into a whole educational podcast because that wasn't the original question. We'll kind of leave it there. Maybe we'll come back to that later on. But so you got to have education. But I wanted to get that said. So there's a lot of different ways to do it right. There's even more ways to do it wrong, as with most things. So if we're going to make a society, well, one of the fundamental things we have to look at is resources. We're stuck on a finite planet. We are not an interplanetary species in any meaningful way yet. And definitely not an intersolar species. So we're stuck here. We got a certain amount of stuff to work with. There's fundamentally there's scarcity. There's only so many trees, only so much water, only so much oxygen, etc. So how do we match that? How do we distribute that? And we've decided in the U.S. that the money, like the dollar. So back in the early days, we go back in the history of money. If I had something that you want, you have something that I want, well, it's pretty easy. We just barter, we trade. And you give me what I want, and I give you what you want. The only difference is maybe it's harder for me to get the thing that you want, and it's easier for you to get the thing that I want. And so maybe you just have a shell, and there's a lot of the shells that not that hard to get, but maybe I have some rock that's much harder to get for some reason you want. So there's a little bit, maybe you give me 2 shells and all that.
Exactly, maybe a couple more shells.
It's workable.
It kind of makes it even.
But when you start having problems where I don't have anything you want, you have something I want, but I have nothing you want, I got to find someone else who's got something you want, and I got to figure out what I can trade them to get what they have that you want. And so we have a 3-way trade now. And it gets more and more complicated as you start bringing in other members. So we invented this little placeholder called money. And money is just resource abstraction. It's kind of an imaginary concept. We agree on something. And if people who say, silver and gold and all those are arbitrary, I have a great article for them. They're actually not. There are certain things you want in money. You wouldn't want to use sugar as money. Because if you got sugar in your pocket, even if it's crystallized and it rains, you're not going to have sugar in your pocket very much longer.
You know what I learned about gold the other day, actually? This is kind of off topic, but it was an interesting concept. I was like, gold really is an interesting resource and form of currency and just an interesting material. But I found that it's actually is formed and very prominent in the sun. And stars. Like gold starts and is formed there, and was there in the birth. I was talking with this physicist that I know down at Lux.
Oh, nice.
He was like showing me this simulation he was working on making for creating for the creation of the Milky Way galaxy. He's trying to figure out how the Milky Way galaxy formed. That's like his research right now is going into that. And it was showing like he had, different types of, I think, gases. There are 2 different types of gases. And he had iron and gold. And those are the other 2 things that they saw like really happen a lot at the beginning of the start, or potentially at the beginning of the start of the Milky Way.
Nuclear fusion, man. Right. Beautiful stuff. Literally alchemy, turning one element to another, which as another short aside, it blew my mind when I finally realized that alchemy exists. We can totally turn lead to gold. It's just super, super expensive to do so. Right. So ever since, we figured out how to bombard one atom with another, we can change elements from one to the other.
Yeah, isn't that crazy?
Terawatts of energy. Insanely expensive.
Yeah.
Anyway, so gold and silver are not totally arbitrary, though, because you want a currency. you can't just use sand. If you're on an island and use sand as your currency, well, you have basically infinite inflation. Any moron can go grab a handful of sand and, oh, here you go, I just paid you. And it's so abundant anyway, it's just no one wants sand.
Right.
It's heavy and it's hard to... So you can't use something common. You can't use something that's heavy like, well, not necessarily it's heavy, but something you would need a lot of it to be worth anything. Mm-hmm. So, and you also, like the Romans had, I think, steel coins, if I'm remembering right, but those can rust. Mm-hmm. You don't want iron-based currency or anything that can break down over time. So you need something that's easy to tell what it is, and gold is pretty unique. There's not too many metals that actually have even a yellow tint to them, let alone that really obvious yellow gold color.
Shiny,
there's
attractive.
Palladium is a really beautiful metal. It would make a good candidate as well, but it's silvery. It looks like a lot of other metals that are silvery.
Right.
If you're trained, you can tell it apart, but most people won't necessarily be like, oh, that's palladium. Uh-huh. So gold it's stable, it's relatively rare, there's enough of it to use as a currency, but not so much that it's not worth anything. So there's reasons. Mm-hmm. But even that, again, gold, while it's useful on its own, while it has intrinsic value, and it's great for creating weights and being non-corrosive, it's actually good for your health in trace quantities, etc., it's still a placeholder.
Yeah, that's such a weird one to me, too, about gold. And this is kind of off topic with gold. But gold is fascinating because it's, you can eat it. Mm-hmm. Like, that's so weird to me. Like, they put gold on food.
It's
I'm like, is that really good for you?
Really disappointing because it tastes like nothing.
Yeah, right.
Yes, you can.
Well, you can't even ingest it. It'll just go through you. But it doesn't cause harm.
If you eat a whole coin, it'll probably do some damage because, like any heavy metal, too much of it is dangerous. But in small quantities, I know it's good for arthritis. There's 2 or 3 other conditions. It's actually helpful to eat gold. It's just kind of expensive.
Yeah. I can't believe they put in gold shard. Do they put real gold in gold shard?
Yeah, they do. Because gold, one of the properties it has, it's extremely ductile. Uh-huh. So you can bend it and bend it and bend it as much as you want. It doesn't snap. Other metals, you bend them back and forth a few times, they snap.
Right.
So you can pound it out to a thinness that is well below the thinness of a sheet of paper. Mm-hmm. And at that point, a single ounce of gold will give you a massive sheet. I don't remember what the dimensions are, but 1 ounce of gold goes a really long way. If you're pounding it into gold leaf, breaking that up into little pieces and throwing a few of those, and I think I don't remember the numbers, but it's something along the lines of like 0.0001 ounces of gold per bottle.
Fascinating.
So an ounce of gold is, well, these days I think it's up around $1,000 or something. It got up to 2, but I think it's back down a little bit. So $1,000 to fill, several 100,000 bottles. It works out to a pretty low cost for a gimmick. So
okay, so let's get back on topic.
But anyway, so it's a placeholder though. Fundamentally, currency is a placeholder. So that seems like a good thing. That's a great way of getting it. So, hey, well, I don't have the thing you want, but I got some of this gold. So let me give you some of this gold, and then you give me the thing I want, and then you can take that gold to the guy who has the stuff that you want, and you can give that to him. He'll give you the thing you want. And now we don't have to prearrange. It gets a lot easier. Mm-hmm. The problem is that having a placeholder it's closely related to Goodhart's law. So it adds a metric that's not a direct measure of anything, of one thing necessarily. And Goodhart's law says any metric that you make a target ceases to be a useful metric. Because as soon as you make that a target, everyone's trying to game it, everyone's trying to maximize that metric. So by having money, which if you're not, anyone who's not already thinking about how prevalent, like this fixation on money as the metric in society, is probably not paying real close attention, because anytime anyone says anything, how much are these shoes? Oh, are they nice shoes? Were they $50? Were they $200? Were they $1,000? How much is that car? How much do you make? Like everything gets turned into a discussion of what's it worth in dollars,
right?
Not what's it worth to you,
right?
How does it improve your quality of life?
What's the extrinsic? Yeah.
But just what's it worth in dollars? And we have become so obsessed with how many dollars does a given thing equate to, even your time.
Yeah.
Well, how much do you make an hour? So in this whole calculation of, is it worth your time to go do this? Mm-hmm. And the problem with that is, while it seems logical and it seems like a good thing, it gets you to maximize this imaginary thing. It's imaginary. Dollars don't have a fixed value. No currency does.
100%.
It changes. And look at cryptocurrency is a great example of how volatile a currency can become.
Yeah.
Where you don't even know, when you go and buy a coffee in the morning, that afternoon, when you look at the value of the currency, if you actually